Clair Obscur is a video game set in a fantasy world where French people are not cowards. I wanted to share with you 33 spoiler-friendly beginner tips aimed at people who just started playing Clair Obscur or are about to embark on their journeys. We'll talk about difficulty settings, parrying, Pictos, and so much more. If you've enjoyed the video, press the like button and comment below something like MDR, which is just LOL in French. Which difficulty settings should you pick? I do not recommend playing on the hardest difficulty because just like in other games like The Witcher 3, for instance, playing on Death March where you just basically have to spam the protection sign because you get one shot. In this game, on the hardest difficulty, you get one shot so much that it sort of prevents you from... later on we will talk about attributes, but the health and defense attributes just become completely unnecessary. You get one shot anyways. So I definitely recommend you to play on the medium difficulty, and just know that there is some kind of a bug where if you've started on the expert difficulty, you set it to a lower difficulty later, you might need to restart your game, otherwise you might still just get one shot. I was so confused when I first started playing why everything was still one-shotting me on the expedition difficulty. So just restart your game, and I do recommend the medium difficulty, but you can set this anytime you want. Now just know that, just like many RPGs, certain areas are higher level. It's kind of confusing because there aren't really levels on enemies visibly. So optional bosses that you find in the world will still one-shot you on the medium difficulty. So sometimes you want to just come back at a later point to defeat these bosses. Otherwise, you might be, resetting for half an hour, which is still fun. I like doing that. So just so you know, some optional bosses still one-shot you on lower difficulties. So since we are talking about difficulty and dying so much, what are the consequences of dying and respawning? There really isn't anything. If you die to a boss, for instance, you just respawn at the previous save and just have to run back, basically, which is kind of irritating because I kind of would have liked to have a save point where I died, whereas you sometimes have to run back for like a minute or two, which is kind of annoying when you do it for the 30th time in a row. If you've played this game a little bit, there are these flags there where you can rest. Don't worry, you don't actually respawn at those flags. There are save points later on when you defeat an enemy or you pick something up. There's actually quite frequent saving in the game. So don't worry about dying. Another thing to keep in mind if you haven't played that much yet is that taking damage in one combat effectively carries over to the next combat. So you really don't want to be taking damage. You want to be doing those parries and dodges. We'll talk more about them later. If one party member dies in the combat, in the next combat they will return at 1 HP basically. So it's not super bad if they die, but obviously you don't want to keep dying. This can be really annoying when you just find, for instance, an optional boss and your party is already at half health, because every single time you run back to that optional boss, your party is you're gonna have half health. So my tip for situations like that is to just run back to an expedition flag you've seen on the way and rest. This will also respawn all the small enemies that you encounter, but you can just run past them quite easily. This might be annoying because if you're fighting an optional boss, you're probably gonna spawn back at the flag itself. So maybe try to defeat one of the enemies closer to that optional boss before the optional boss, without taking damage. So you have like a safe spot where you can keep resetting and going back to that difficult boss you are trying. So since we are on the topic of combat and healing, sometimes it's best not to finish combat fast. So if you leave like one enemy alive at the end of combat and you can just heal yourself with different party skills, right? And then kill the last enemy. You effectively heal yourself up to full health because for whatever reason you can't use your healing abilities, outside of combat. Now, once you unlock the camp, You can put up a camp and then rest at the campfire anytime you want, but do keep in mind that this like camping mechanic is only available in the main world area, you know, where your characters are in a bird's eye view. When you are inside zones, you know, where your characters are in like a closer third-person view, you do have to run back to flags, or you can press tab and then Q or the equivalent on a controller to use your chroma elixir to heal your entire party, and these refresh on flag interaction, I think. There are these items that you use in combat that you can use. Kind of annoying to use them because they take up a turn, and also you die to a boss, you use an item, they don't replenish until you reach a flag, so I almost never use these items. The next couple of tips are going to be all about combat abilities, and then we can go on to the parrying and dodging mechanics. But before we do so, I just wanted to point out that if you go into the menu and then Expedition Basics, so many things are explained there, so many of the tutorial stuff, but also, you know, what different buffs and debuffs do. I'm not going to go into detail regarding these buffs and debuffs, because it's just there, you know, and the video would be too long. But just go into the Expedition Basics, you know, read some of the stuff that you might have missed. Now, when it comes to combat, I know most of you already know this, but I want to explain this for the, whatever, 5% of people that didn't get some of the stuff, or didn't really understand what the stuff about, especially like the Gustav tutorial said. Again, very little spoilers in this video. I do have to spoil some stuff, obviously, to explain the things, but I'm mainly going to be talking about Gustav, okay? So there are different combat points in the game. I just call them combat points, okay? So generally you want to use skills to attack and not the regular attack, because over multiple turns using skills does more damage. Obviously there's like healing skills and buffing skills, but that's pretty much it. It's just that your party is going to do more damage if you use skills. But skills cost AP, this blue AP, I guess it's action points, right? And the main way to build AP is to just use the normal, simple attack. Every single character in the game has AP, action points, but different characters are gonna have also different other combat points. Like, another combat point that Gustav has is called Overcharge. At first it's kind of difficult to see. It is on his UI next to his avatar. It's this little lightning icon that is difficult to see. So with Gustav, there is obviously this AP thing going on where you have to have AP to spend skills, but one of his skills generates this overcharge electricity icon, right? And another one spends it. So in your regular Gustav rotation, whatever you want to call it, you probably want to attack once or twice to build enough AP, use that first skill to build overcharge to near 10, right? And then if you have anywhere above like 7, just use this other skill to spend the overcharge. I don't really want to spoil the other characters, but they might have similar combat points to overcharge. There is also something called re-aim. It's when you right click with your mouse and then left click to shoot, or the equivalent on a controller. This generally does very little damage, and it also costs AP to shoot, which is something I didn't get at the first time I started playing. So you don't really want to use it. However, a lot of enemies have a weak spot that you can shoot once and it does insane damage. So you don't really want to spam this free aim ability, but later on there's gonna be Pictos, we'll talk about them, that will buff free aim, for instance. The final combat mechanic worth talking about here is the break bar. If you have played the video game Dauntless, it's basically like Stagger. You fill up this bar under the enemy's health, which is essentially like the stun bar. You fill it up with different attacks, and once you fill this up and you break the bar, the enemy gets stunned, so it prevents them from playing for a turn and they take 20% more damage for that turn. Now, all attacks can fill the bar, but only certain attacks can finish the bar, if that makes sense. Like Gustav's Overcharge. So an advanced strategy, you don't really need this or need to know this at first, but you wanna break the bar with your lead character, so then your other two characters in the party have a free turn to attack. But most of the times it's kind of difficult to time this, I guess. Most important part of the video, damage avoidance. There are 3 damage avoidance skills: dodge, parry, and jump. Dodging and parrying is kind of interchangeable, right? Jumping is something you unlock a little bit into the story. So in this game, all 3 of these abilities prevent you from taking damage completely. Parrying is like dodge, but it's much harder. It has a shorter window, right? Technically, you know, when you press Q to dodge, and sometimes you get a perfect dodge. Well, a normal parry is like a perfect dodge, so it's really timing dependent. But parrying gives you back AP, and sometimes you can counterattack as well. If there are multiple attacks the enemy does, you need to parry most of them. Not all of them, but most of them to get a counterattack. So parrying and dodging is interchangeable, but jumping isn't. So attacks that you can avoid with jumping are different. They have a different icon as well. And they are the easiest, right? You have the most amount of time, and you can also counterattack the jump attacks. It's fairly easy. But just so you know, you can also turn off these QT events completely in the menu. Something worth knowing for the next tips. Parrying frustrations. So when you first start playing this game, you don't really know how difficult it is. You're probably going to be really angry when parrying and dodging doesn't work. And most of it is probably your fault. It's a skill issue. Some of it isn't. So let's talk about that for a couple of tips. So to parry effectively, you want to parry, right? Like you don't want to dodge most of the attacks. You probably want to parry. Most people say parry just before it hits you. It's not technically true. It is a bit before the actual attack, so it's not instant, okay? In case you haven't been hitting your parries, just some basic stuff. There is a short cooldown, obviously, right? So you can't just spam it. There's like a second or two that you have to wait before you can parry or dodge again. Really important question to answer. Can all attacks be parried? It's actually kind of amazing that this game has been out for a month. People say different things. Some people say every attack that can be dodged can also be parried. Other people say they can't. In my experience, most attacks can probably be parried. I think all attacks can be parried. It's just that some attacks are not worth parrying at all because they are almost impossible to parry. So at that point, you might as well just dodge, right? It's better than spending an hour on that boss. Kind of separate tip, because I know some of you are really hell-bent on not cheating or whatever. Some attacks are really difficult to parry. They're not apparent what you are supposed to be parrying. Like, I don't have footage of this, but there was this Troubadour optional boss that just one-shot me every time. And I didn't realize that he was actually summoning these like ghosts that you were supposed to parry. I was looking at the giant trumpet that I was supposed to dodge. So my tip is that if you fail to parry something like 10 times in a row, you're frustrated, just go online, check out a video, go to the forums, because that's what I did. People on the forums were saying that you're not supposed to dodge the stupid trumpet. It's the ghost that you are supposed to parry. And still I couldn't parry it, so I just started dodging everything. Or dodging the ghost parts. So it's not that big of a deal. Just if you've been failing for so many times, just go on the forums and check it. It's your game. You do whatever you want to do. With that being said, if you've been trying and you know all of that stuff that I just said, there is some parry bugs or like input lags. Okay, It's most noticeable when you are swapping skills or you're selecting skills. There is a noticeable input lag. And I have noticed before that when I just pressed one button to dodge your parry, the character didn't do anything, which can be really frustrating. There is an input lag on keyboard and mouse apparently. So what you can do is get a controller like this. This is like kind of cheap too, but you can just use it on your PC. Unfortunately, some people are saying that it doesn't really help. I don't know if they are. I don't know if it's a skill issue or it is like an actual thing that controllers also have this input lag. What you can do is disable the Steam controller option on your game, but that means you have to install a separate controller software, so it's just a pain in the ass. I think later on it gets a little bit better. So later in the story, once you unlock jumping, a lot of the enemy attacks will seem like, you know, they are smashing down on the ground and you have to jump that, but it's not the case. That's why the developers put in this like jump icon on the enemy attacks. So once you unlock jumping, just you don't have to jump that much. It will just check the icon, okay? Look for the jump marker. The final tip about dodging, jumping, again, there's an input lag, so jumping itself is fine, but you know, you can left click to counter attack. I found that it didn't do it so many times, so my tip for you is that once you press, you know, space or the controller equivalent for jump, just press the attack button, the left click, just spam it, just spam it, just spam it, because there's a noticeable input lag there and you might miss out on some damage if you don't. I wanted to take one tip out of the 33 to explain something about the story that you might have missed. Most of you got it already though. So the Gommage, the very beginning in the story, where people just die, it's not people that are, you know, whatever, like 33 years every year. So the number that the main boss, the paintress, is painting on that stone is the age where people of that age and above die, okay? So she painted 33 in the beginning of the story. Everybody who was 33 years old or older, technically there are no older people, right? But stay with me, just it's 33 or older that died. So for instance, Expedition 69, like 30 years prior, when she painted that 69, everybody who was 69 years old or older died at that point. It's something to keep in mind because older expeditions, right, they had older people in them. But now this is the main driving factor of the story, is that soon there's only gonna be children remaining to go on expeditions and fight the paintress, right? And then they're not gonna have children. So extinction is the driving factor in the story. Another super obvious thing that I know some of you just missed is that when you are out in the world, before you attack an enemy, you should press F or the parry button on the controller to sort of attack first. This gives you the advantage of attacking first, not every time, but most of the times in combat. Sometimes you need to be extremely close for that to affect the enemy, so don't accidentally walk into an enemy. At the very beginning of the video, we talked about these extremely difficult optional bosses. Well, some of the optional bosses are actually too powerful for your party's level, right? So I just wanted to take a tip to explain that just leave them for a later date. It's kind of normal in RPGs, but you might not be familiar with RPGs. The concrete tip is something like, you know, if you deal only like less than 3% damage to a boss with one attack, just leave it for a later date. You're not supposed to fight it just yet. There are many of these in the main like bird's eye view area where you can camp. Another stupidly obvious tip is just to look for loot, right? All of you know this, but some of you I know have not played RPGs before, so the specific tip is really looking for loot in the boss room. So once you defeated one of the optional or main story bosses, there's usually like a boss room around it. Make sure to take the time to look around the entire room, because there might be some Pictos and other resources that are just super important. some of the Pictos that we are about to talk about are just super useful, right? Other ones are extremely useless, but collecting all of them is kind of important. So what are Pictos? The game explains them in a different way than I do, so just pay attention. Pictos are technically two passive skills in one. So there's a main passive and a sort of secondary passive that they provide. The main passive is related to abilities normally, then the secondary is just stats. Any given character can only equip 3 Pictos, and once you equip a Picto, you get both the main and the secondary passive with them, right? Multiple characters cannot equip the same Picto, right? But there exists multiples of the same Picto. That's why there's a number next to the Picto name, like 1, 2, 3. I was wondering for a long time where I could spend the money in the game, also called the chroma. Don't worry about it. You're gonna unlock it a little bit later in the story. You're gonna unlock these trader guys. Just keep picking up everything until then. You might also be wondering where you can upgrade your weapons, because you probably already unlocked the camping mechanic, but you cannot find anywhere where you can upgrade your stupid weapons. Don't worry again, the game doesn't explain this, but the first time you unlock the camp, you don't have the guy to upgrade your weapons with, so just wait until the water section. There's also luminas. The game has these weird words for everything, so I'm not surprised if you are confused, but don't worry, I'll explain everything in one sentence. Lumina points are basically space for extra primary passives from Pictos. So we talked about the primary passive that you get, you know, something related to abilities, and then the secondary passive, which is just stats. The Lumina points are basically space on a given character to equip multiple or more of these Picto passives. You can only equip 3 Pictos, right? But you can have as many Lumina points as you want. This is also something that unlocks at the camp. The same guy that upgrades your weapons will upgrade these, so don't worry if you haven't unlocked this yet. So as you already probably know, you need to win 4 battles with a character with a certain Picto to unlock that main passive. And this is the reason why, is that you can equip the same main passive on the person who has the Picto and on other people as well. So maybe you found a really powerful Picto main passive. You need to win 4 times with that character without dying. That character has to stay alive. So then you unlock that to equip on other characters. And you can actually see the amount of battles you still need in the character menu. It's completely yellow, you know, the 4 corners, if you've already unlocked that Picto passive. The Luminas continued. Generally speaking, stronger stronger primary passives cost more luminous to equip on a character, but also remember I said that there are duplicates of Pictos, where the duplicates also cost more to equip for whatever reason. It's just so you don't spam the same powerful Pictos, I guess. So again, upgrading this Lumina capacity unlocks later at the camp, and you probably want your 3 main characters to sort of share the amount of Lumina points that they have. There's also attributes. These are the stats of your characters. Most of them are quite straightforward. There are 5 of them. You know, health increases your health so you can take more damage. Defense reduces damage, but I cannot really tell you at what point you should stack defense instead of health. And even if I did, I don't want you to know. Listen, so many of you just go on the forums and watch videos even before you start playing about min-maxing in this game. And in my honest opinion, you don't really need to min-max in the second difficulty at the very least. And it's not really fun either. So Uh, don't look up videos about how to min-max the stats and whatnot. Just try to enjoy the game. The first time, at the very least, just try different stats. You find these recoats, anyways, that can reset your stats and your skills. So just enjoy yourself. Another thing I wanted to mention about attributes. So damage is damage. Luck increases your critical chance. The game does tell you this. What you might not have noticed at the very beginning is that increasing one stat might also increase another one. So increasing agility, it increases the speed. Really important for you to know, that's probably the hardest one to understand, is that the more speed a character has, they might attack multiple times in a turn, kind of, okay? Anyways, agility might also increase your defense, for instance. I'm not 100% sure, but there's probably diminishing returns if you keep stacking one skill. Then it's the game probably wants you to put points into other stats, is what I'm trying to say. Another thing I forgot to mention is that weapons actually scale from different attributes. So, for instance, this weapon from Gustav would actually deal more damage if we were to put points into vitality and agility. It's just something to keep in mind. You change your weapons anyway so much that you're probably not gonna change these attributes all the time. It would take too many recoats, right? And this is kind of our next tip as well. I know most of you will probably just stack damage, and that's not a super good idea. I started stacking damage and luck on Gustav, and I can tell you that it's really annoying when after a while they just die in one hit, right? So I like what they did in the game. It also feels like maybe it's just the amount of might I stacked on Gustav. Putting 1 point into health seems to be getting more health than just putting 1 point into might damage. It's almost like damage is nerfed, and it's actually a good thing to put into points. I also want to explain in this tip why I think defensive builds are more interesting. So when you are first trying to beat a boss, you keep dying to it. Health and defense just help you learn the game better, I think. You spend more time in combat, you can learn the parries more effectively. That is the way I like to play. If you like to play a different way, that's also fine. But like I mentioned, even if you go a full glass cannon build, you will need to put some points into health and defense. Otherwise, you will have to hit every single parry or dodge. Most of my characters I put in, health and defense, and it was actually, I just found it more fun and more effective. They were the ones that stayed alive for most of the combat, even if I was hitting 80% plus parries. So don't disregard the health and defense attributes. A short tip, it's kind of important to know as well, is that you can only have 3 people in combat at the same time. The reason why it's important to know is if you unlock your 4th or consecutive characters, you might start spamming the Lumina points on them or whatever, upgrading their weapons. I'm not saying they are pointless, because if your first 3 characters die in combat, then the second team comes in. So you do use them. It's just that you probably want to put most of your points into your 3 main characters that you are using in combat first. So weird tip, when you are browsing vendors and they sell a weapon, it doesn't really say which character that weapon belongs to. It's obvious when it's like a chakra instead of a sword, but multiple characters have swords. So how do you know which weapon that belongs to? All weapons of the same character end in the same 2 letters. So for instance, all of Gustav's weapons end with, AM. So that's kind of a weird little trick you can use at traders to tell that it's Gustav's weapon, because it's gonna end at, the same 2 characters, AM. It's kind of easy to get lost in this game. I know a lot of people are gonna be angry, like, I already knew what to do the first time. You guys are so stupid for not knowing. It is difficult to tell sometimes, okay? Kind of 2 tips in one. One of them is pay attention in cutscenes, because important information is said there, and after the cutscene, if you go back to the character that gave you the quest, for instance, they often don't say what they said in the cutscene. You can always press Q or the controller equivalent to check the current objective, which does help, but it doesn't help enough. There is a map. You can press M for the map in the main like bird's eye view area, but that map is not available inside zones. So sometimes it's kind of difficult to know what you are supposed to do. So just press Q, look for climbable areas or areas where you can, jump to, which ones I'm on about. And if you are lost for 15 minutes, like I was at one point, just, again, go online, look up a video. Who cares if it's cheating? Like, just go there. Just don't spend 45 minutes on looking for a ledge, okay? It's your game. You can play however you want. An important thing to know as well is that you can actually go back to certain areas. Like if you found an optional boss in the flying water section, for instance, you can actually go back after you finish the main quest in that area. Just go there on the main map thing and just enter. And for the final tip, I wanted to spend a little time talking about like the extra RPG things. Like there are these locks and this special enemy called Petanks. Petanks are essentially loot goblins that can also attack you. They flee in a couple of turns, so you want to kill them, you want to defeat them to get their loot in a certain amount, under a certain amount of time. We talked about the stunning breaking mechanic at the beginning of this video, so a lot of the times you probably want to utilize this. Stun them constantly so you have extra turns so they don't flee. But other than that, I don't really know if they respawn if you fail to kill them under a certain amount of time. So there is this, just reload the game, okay? The UI is kind of weird. Don't worry, there's more than 3 reload saves you have. The game saves like the past 10 or 20 reloads or saves. You just have to scroll, okay, in the reload menu. And another thing, just a small thing that I didn't really understand because I'm stupid, is these locks that provide extra loot. For whatever reason, I was looking for the locks on the floor in other parts of the zone. When you find one of these locks, the 3 locks that you have to shoot are in the same room above the character, right? So just look around and you'll find them kinda easily. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, press the like button, comment below something, like your extra tips if you have any. Subscribe for more, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye-bye.